And for full disclosure, I also do not have a PhD, but I appreciate you asking me to speak this afternoon anyway. As you heard earlier today, water conservation is the easiest, most effective, and most efficient method to quickly reduce water demands and extend our supplies into the next year. In accordance with the governor's executive order mandating a 25% reduction through February of 2016, the State Water Board passed a regulation on May 5th, 2015, which assigned each urban water supplier with a mandatory conservation requirement. Those range from 4 to 36% based on their residential gallons per capita use in July through September of 2014. I'm happy to say as of September 2015, this couple months ago, 72% of the water suppliers were meeting their conservation standards with a cumulative savings of 28.1%, which equates to 253.4 billion gallons of water saved. And this is 65% of the goal. So we're well on the way to meeting that reduction target as long as we keep at it. Along with regulation, there's the need for enforcement. And the State Water Board has the authority to issue monetary penalties, and has. But the State Water Board is working directly with the suppliers that are not meeting their conservation standards to get them on track. The Water Board has issued 68 warning letters, 99 information orders, 8 conservation orders, 7 alternative compliance orders, and 4 monetary complaints amounting to $61,000. That is in addition to the thousands of warnings and fines issued by the local agencies. As you heard earlier, water conservation puts a burden on the supplier for managing their fixed costs. So the State Water Board has conducted a series of workshops with stakeholders to gain input on conservation pricing. And as the governor has indicated in various portions, the Proposition 218 is a significant obstacle to many local agencies being able to pursue sustainable water conservation pricing because of the nexus needed in Prop 218 between the cost incurred and the price charged, and there is a disconnect when you're in conservation pricing. Secondly, I want to touch base on recycled water. The State Water Board strongly supports the use of recycled water, and in 2009 adopted a recycled water policy to promote the use of recycled water and set targets of at least 1 million acre feet by 2020 and 2 billion acre feet by 2030 of recycled water use. We have, to promote that, both the regulations and financial assistance. 2 main funding sources for financial assistance: the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. In March of 2014, the State Board approved a reduced interest rate to 1% for financing of recycled water projects up through December 2nd, 2015, which is coming up. Of the $800 million the board earmarked for that, we have obligated $525 million as of October, and we are still evaluating and working with applicants. Under Proposition 1, the State Water Board has $625 million for recycled water projects to be provided through loans and grants. Of that, $260 million was allocated this year by the legislature. The State Water Board will be putting out their guidance on that shortly, and given the interest by local agencies, there's high probability the State Water Board will be able to encumber that $260 million this year. We also have a number of policies in development to improve and incentivize the use of recycled water. Under current law, the State Water Board has to develop and adopt uniform regulations for surface water augmentation of recycled water. And what that means is the use of recycled water to augment surface water supplies into drinking water reservoirs. That requirement must be completed by December 31st, 2016, and we're on track to meeting that date. Additionally, the State Water Board has to investigate the feasibility of direct potable reuse of reclaimed water and provide a report to the legislature by December 31st, 2016. The State Water Board has convened an expert panel in late 2014, and that panel is fully engaged and is working to determine the feasibility at this time. The State Board will issue a draft report by June 30th, 2016 to meet the required date of December 31st. Additionally, in 2014, the legislature required the State Water Board to determine by December 31st, 2016, whether the use of disinfected tertiary recycled water could be used for animal stock feeding, and would that pose a risk to public health. So the State Water Board has a panel looking into that, and will be making a recommendation by that time. Switching to stormwater, along with the Department of Water Resources, we also have some financial assistance available for stormwater under Proposition 1. There's $200 million allocated for stormwater capture and reuse of by the State Water Board. The State Board released draft guidance guidelines for the funding in August, and will consider adoption of those funding guidelines in December of 2015, next month. We expect the first round of funding to begin in spring. This will also, along with our other financial assistance under Proposition 1, there will be technical assistance available for disadvantaged communities to help them get access to this funds. In addition to the funding, we also have some policies and programs moving forward. Under Chapter 555 of 2014, it was the SB 985 legislation, required public agencies to develop a stormwater resource plan in order to be eligible for Prop 1 funding. And the State Board is currently developing those guidelines, and we expect to bring them to our board for consideration December 1st, so that that folks will have that guidance available for those stormwater plans. In looking at stormwater over the past couple of decades, the State Water Board has recognized that there are a number of obstacles, both perceived and real, to capture and reuse of stormwater, and so they have initiated a strategic initiative of looking at stormwater resource management and what obstacles exist and how to eliminate those obstacles. We have a team that we've put together that will be bringing forth a work plan for the board to consider in December and move forward on implementing that so that we can fully utilize stormwater. We also have along with this concept of all of the above in the Water Action Plan, we have been looking at not only stormwater and recycled water, but also desalination. And in May of this year, the State Water Board amended its ocean plan to address desalination facilities. This was the first time that there's a uniform, consistent process for permitting seawater desalination facilities. The amendment provides a clear path for permitting of desalination facilities while protecting marine life from both the intake impacts and the discharge impacts. The State Water Board has a long history of groundwater cleanup actions, and along with the Proposition 1, which authorized $900 million for addressing groundwater contamination and that's used for drinking water supplies. As we heard earlier, if you're going to use a groundwater basin for storage, and these are some of the best storage options available, many of those need to have cleanup or remediation, and the contamination needs to be considered in that process. We are planning to release the draft guidelines in late December, early January, and with the first funding for this groundwater cleanup in late 2016. We also have a long history of addressing contamination from underground storage tanks through a 2 cent per gallon fee that is assessed on all underground storage tanks. Just recently in 2014, new legislation set aside 3 mills, which is approximately $40 million annually, for to be available for cleanup of sites that weren't eligible in the past for the underground tank program. These are the small facilities, dry cleaners, abandoned facilities where there is a impact on water supply but no responsible party to address it, and this money will be a step in that direction. And the Water Board will consider the first of those project lists in early 2016. I think that Director Cowan covered the Sigma quite well, and I will not jump into that and regurgitate, but I will talk a little bit about conjunctive use. Recycled water and stormwater are good options for the conjunctive use. For conjunctive use to work, you need a supply to put into the ground, and those are good options that we're working diligently on. But there is additionally the potential, when we have these high precipitation events, for high flows to be captured during winter weather. So in accordance with the governor's executive order from last week, the State Water Board and regional boards will prioritize the issuance of permits to accelerate water quality and water right permits approvals for capturing these high precipitation events this winter and into the future. That would include issuance of temporary water right permits, water quality certification, waste discharge requirements, conditional waivers of waste discharge requirements, essentially whatever regulatory mechanisms we need to get that water into the ground. And with that, I think that I will make myself available for questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Secretary Laird earlier talked about some of the challenges of the public understanding, pricing issues, and the fact that it just seems doesn't seem intuitive that I use less water but I'm paying more, and how do you explaining that to the public and helping them understand that and kind of how the system works. It also seems to me that similar issue with the increased use of recycling, because historically the public has been fairly opposed to the concept of recycled water. We've seen some change in public acceptance, perhaps, or willingness to at least to think about this. I know that the Water Resource and Control Board has done some public workshops on some of these issues. Are there other things that the state should be doing to engage our citizens and our public in thinking about what we need to do, both around pricing, around recycling, around conservation and alternative use? What else can we be doing?
Great question. I would agree that getting this message across that we're going to expect ratepayers and taxpayers, for that matter, to pay more to hopefully not lose more than they would have otherwise. It's a tough message. Frankly, in our discussions regarding financing of the California Water Fix, the Delta Pipelines project, it's the same story. Why would we expect water users in Southern California, the Bay Area, and the Central Valley to pay more to get the same amount of supply they are now? Well, we have to make the case that sustainability is worth the price we're asking people to pay for. I think we have as good an opportunity now as we ever have. I mean, we're in this unique opportunity right now where we're messaging to the public, keep conserving water because we might have a 5th year of drought, plus prepare for a potential Godzilla El Nino flood event. And that really is what we're looking at as the new normal for California extremes. So we've got to be able to message better that global climate change leads to these extremes, means that the typical inexpensive sources of water are a thing of the past, and more expensive options are part of the future. We've been lucky for decades or generations that we've had relatively inexpensive water throughout California, some more expensive than others. But moving forward, water is going to be more expensive, and we're going to have to pay for it.
Earlier today, we had some testimony from Dr. Adair from Israel, who said, essentially that pricing has been critical to them in terms of how they have managed water in their country. That they pay a lot for water because they see it as a commodity and not a resource.
Well, the difficult thing is of course we have a pre-existing condition, which is our water rights system and the water allocation system, and it's set up in ways that people don't automatically pay the full cost in some instances, and in others, if they conserve, it doesn't automatically go back to the good. It might get reallocated. And so it's a difficult question as to how to do that. And in Jurassic times, when I was a city council member in the 1980s, we had a situation. Santa Cruz, for a mile, is beautiful coastal plain, and then it's hills. And everybody paid the same rates for water, but the people in the hills were being subsidized by the people in the flats because they had separate tanks and energy costs had to be paid to put it up there. We adopted an elevation surcharge so that the people in the hills paid the actual cost of the water and the people in the flats paid the actual cost of water. It required some education, but the public went with it without protest, and it was clear that in some places where you were paying a higher cost for water when it was the actual cost, there was more of a motivation to conserve because it was real to them. And so the question is when you have 430 municipal agencies and they're the ones that are really making the decisions, it's how do you help them with education and how do you give them backbone or incentives from the state level? And I don't even know what those are. I just know that that's where the decision-making authority is in a lot of places, and we have to have a gradual move to actual cost. And it's the other thing that happened when I was in the legislature is we adopted the metering bill. And we adopted the metering bill at the beginning of my service, and the original then Assembly member Chris Kehoe introduced it, and the idea was to have, I believe, a 10-year phase-in. We could not get the votes to get majority votes unless we accepted amendments and moved it to 20 years. If it had been 10 years, it would have phased in across the state in time for the worst part of this dry period. In Sacramento, they're at 47% phase-in, and when people pay costs that are related to their use rather than the flat charges, they are much more efficient. And so we are in some places moving with the implementation of that bill to the fact that people will see exactly what they use and pay accordingly, and I think that will lead to some conservation in those particular jurisdictions.
Heard testimony about groundwater overdrafting, particularly Central Valley and Tulare area and others. Has that any impact on does it impact in any way, shape, or form the infrastructure of our state water project?
Well, definitely, and it has been for decades since construction of the California Aqueduct. We've seen periods of subsidence with it essentially means sagging in the profile of the aqueduct. So we lose capacity of our ability to use gravity to move water. So we're still assessing specifically what the impacts of this latest exasperated subsidence is having on the system, but we know it's not good. We expect it will continue regardless of what happens with next year's hydrology, so it's something to be managed. But I'd feel a lot less comfortable if we weren't on the road to implement the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. We do need to deal with these issues in the near term, the next decade or longer. And it's a big challenge for us right now. We've got to strike the right balance with local governments to try to reduce those types of impacts. It's not just, of course, the California Aqueduct or our water facilities, but local transportation facilities, bridges. What we may find out this year is just what kind of impact subsidence has had on the San Joaquin River floodway system. Water will find the low ground, and I suspect that it'll be a little lower than it was last time that the San Joaquin River flooded. So we're expecting additional flood impacts in the San Joaquin Valley around the San Joaquin River as a result of that.
I think, perhaps this is for you, Mr. Bishop, but there's been some, I think, goals set for recycling by 2020. How are we doing in moving towards those?
So we're actually doing quite well and moving towards that. I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but I actually think that if you can call it a silver lining of this drought, is a renewed vigor with local agencies to invest in recycling and to avail themselves of the funding that we have, and a much greater acceptance in the public of the use of recycled water and for the use of groundwater recharged with sea recycled water. Just this last year, the LA Regional Board permitted 100% of the seawater barriers that were using potable water to keep the salt water out of the Central and West Basin in Los Angeles, and converted those all over to highly treated wastewater. So that's a huge volume of potable water that was now can be used for other uses, and recycled water now being recharging the basin and protecting it from salt water.
Thank you. At the risk of starting a war with my colleague, Mr. Santiago, let me ask this question.
No, we'd be happy if the entertainment came from that side.
We saw a map earlier that showed, that the system we built moves water, imports it from the Colorado into parts of Southern California, moves water from Northern California into parts of Southern California. So if the Southern California region does a really good job at increasing the diversity of their portfolio with recycling and desal, will I get to keep more of my water in Northern California and not have to send it to Mr. Santiago?
No, I never thought I would say this, but when Senator Kuehl was here, she would step into these situations and say, it is state water. It's not your water. It is state water of all the people in the state, regardless of where they live. And apologies to now Supervisor Kuehl for saying that. I think that 2 points to be made about that. The first one is that south of the Tehachapi's does not get enough credit for what has been done already. They have grown by 4 to 5 million people in the last generation on less water. So they have gotten more efficient, and that has handled their growth, which then, of course, requires that they have a more reliable supply. And also, after the drought that was in the decade just before 2000, they never wanted to face that again, and they invested billions of dollars in storage, whether it's part of the Kern County Water Bank, whether it's Pyramid Lake. They did many things to add additional storage and supply for reliability, and that's been tested in this very dry period. They still have whatever it is, a year and a half or 2 years supply at normal level, but they started with 5. And I think the mayor of Los Angeles clearly recognizes that there needs to be less reliability on imported water, but at the same time, you left out the Owens Valley. So if you went Owens Valley for the city of Los Angeles, the Colorado River, and imported water from the Delta, there was a time in the last decade when the perfect storm happened. I don't know, at the time they were in something like the 8th or 10th year of drought in the Colorado River. The Owens Valley was tied up in litigation. They had an incredible dry year, and a judge turned off the tap at the Delta for a while. And it was a wake-up call for how much imported water is key to their system. And I think no matter what the goal is, it will take decades to achieve that, and they have to deal with reliability of the imported water till they could get to any transition. But some of the very things we've been talking about in this panel are options for them, so that there would be less reliability on state water.
With that, let me say thank you very much to the panel. Appreciate you being with us today. Thank you. And our final 2 presenters, I'd like to invite forward Buzz Thompson and Peter Glick.
No, doesn't matter. Do more numbers. Maybe go with Peter. Yeah. Me? Yeah.
So,
all right. The decision's been made. Yeah.
okay. So, Dr. Thompson is the...
Nope. Oh, we're going to go with Dr. Glick first.
Dr. Glick, okay. So Dr. Glick, co-founder and president of the Pacific Institute, welcome.